What's going on, guys? The Arid Lord is here. Welcome back to another video. This one was the one I promised in the channel update, which is a review of Season 4 of The Boys. I think this is the first review I've done for really any of The Boys stuff, even though I've been watching the series since it first came out years ago. I don't remember when Season 1 came out. I think it was like 2019, roughly. I remember it was back when I was living in an old apartment with some of my friends who have all been in my reaction videos from Walking Dead stuff in years past. But the main reason I'm covering season 4 and I didn't cover the previous seasons, just some general thoughts on this season in general. Um, I think it's a lot of what people have been saying about this season. And the response from the showrunner has been kind of surprising. I don't know why showrunners take this vitriolic tone with their fans. It never works because if the end goal is to get viewers and, you know, I don't see how attacking viewers gets more. Or maybe it's just to sound and feel self righteous in the moment at the cost of people who are enjoying your content. Granted, there is only one more season of The Boys. They announced that there is going to be a season 5, but season 5 will be the final season. There's no release date. Obviously, season 4 just concluded like today, so there's really. They're not going to have information on that. Also, I imagine Gen V Season 2 will probably come out in between Season 5. Unfortunately, one of the main actors, I don't know if you guys knew this, died in like a motorcycle crash. He was one of the main guys. I forget his name. He was the guy who was opposite of the female lead. And his character, he's part of Season 2 and was supposed to be. And now, apparently, they're rewriting Season 2 to like write him out and like it's unfortunate because I guess, the greater story was supposed to incorporate him, and now that's not the case. So I'm assuming some season 2 stuff will happen because a lot of the stuff that happened in Gen V season 1, mainly the virus, that whole season was like the secret of what was going on at Godolkin University for the Supes. And then it was revealed that, well, this is, again, spoilers for people. I'm assuming if you're watching a finale review for Season 4, you're caught up with the boys' storyline. But that whole thing was virus experimentation to take out the superheroes. They were almost like, the secret leaders of Godolkin were almost like the boys 2.0 because they were trying to take out the Supes and experimenting on kids and getting the virus was the end goal. And then by the end, Victoria Newman gets it, and then Billy Butcher finds out about it, and then the virus is it's a big-ish plot point in season 4, and maybe that's the good segue, a solid segue into some of the problems with season 4, because I'm not going to break it down by episode, but, and maybe that's because there's a lot of episodes in season 4 where it just doesn't feel like a lot a lot happens. There's a lot of time spent with riots, and like you can even see it in the cover promo photo that I'm using on my channel right now as an overlay. This is the promo poster for for The Boys season 4, and you see riot troops. We have our main cast. Jeffrey Dean Morgan was a guest actor this season. I don't know if he'll come back in season 5 because, spoiler warning for Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, he was actually a hallucination of Butcher. There's a number of plot points in this season. One of them, which was left over, because in season 3, Billy kept taking the Compound V. It gave him powers similar to Homelander. But then there's this like brain tumor virus that's like growing inside of him, and it's like, oh, he has 6 months to live. I didn't think for a second they were going to kill him off, even though like the show was leading you to believe that. I thought it was a sleight of hand, and then obviously we find out that it's just a power mutation within him, which is like this tentacle monster, which comes into play in the very final episode. But that's explored in small doses, I guess, because the political commentary, which is, the overarching complaint about this season, I think is just too much. Like, subtle political commentary works well. But in this show, it's just hitting, like, there's the expression hitting the nail on the head. This is like taking the hammer, hitting the nail on the head, and then smashing the nail further, driving it through concrete, and then just smashing it further and further until you're splitting the foundation and there's debris and rubble falling down. Like, this is to the point where you're hitting the nail so hard your actual foundation is falling apart. And the foundation of this show is the dynamics and the character development of the superheroes and the cat and mouse game between the boys and the superheroes. Mainly Homelander as the overarching villain. I mean, there's other small villains like the Deep. Victoria Newman kind of straddles both sides because she's trying to get into power in the government, but she also secretly has superpowers. She was at the end of Gen V getting the virus because her husband was the one that was somewhat responsible for creating it. So the main enjoyment of the first like, think about season like, I felt, in my opinion, season 3 was the most enjoyable of all of the seasons, closely followed by season 1, because season 1 is what got things kickstarted. But Soldier Boy as this secondary antagonist, because each season kind of has like its own standalone antagonist. I guess you could say it was a combination of Victoria Newman and Firecracker, and then you also had Sage, who was the really, really smart chick. So it was a combination of Sage and Firecracker, and then sort of Victoria Newman, although like she kind of turns by the end, but then it doesn't really matter. I guess you could also say the light and dark conflict within Butcher was also kind of a villain. But each season, like, Stormfront was the main villain of season 2. Soldier Boy eventually was the main villain of season 3. Although Homelander is like the through villain. And now by the end of season 4, really it is the end game with what they pull off. Basically a coup within the government. Even though Victoria Newman's plot to take over through the VP route doesn't work because of what happens to her, they still pull it off through their other puppets. The scene where they have that big Republican get-together, like, you could tell, like, the seeds were already being planted in other ways, so it didn't really matter. But it's okay to have all of that stuff in your season, but I just think a lot of the political stuff was just too much. Like, in this finale episode, like, they make, like, hard references to January 6th. They call them Starlighters. You have Vought News, and you have these segments with Firecracker where it's very Fox News. They talk about, woke media and coming for your rights. Like, it's just, again, if you want to do this in a subtle way, I'm all for it, because it's obviously shows that touch on contemporary issues and modern commentary and modern issues resonates very well. And having written a book that touches on the gun debate, I know what it's like to infuse jabs and different notation, those things into your work, but I always try to do it in a subtle manner. Like, my book takes place 100 years in the future, so I'm not making January 6th references. I'm not trying to make references to maybe, Trump or assassination stuff. I mean, well, that's very contemporary, but I'm not trying to make it this liberalism, wokeness versus the extreme far right. Like, I'm not trying to make a line-by-line parallel expression in my work. Like, if it's subtle within the creativity of your own universe, that's fine. But it's too much to the point where it's like going right at the issue, but using the characters of Homelander and Starlight, and and it's just annoying because the show has done other things. Like, what it's known for is it has superheroes in it. The superhero fight scenes, that carries it. The deep state government stuff, that carries it. But within its own universe, like back in seasons 1 and 2, like all of the stuff that Vought was doing in secret with Homelander, and you didn't even know that Ryan was his kid, and secretly what they did with the wife, and then you find out later like Homelander's origins through Soldier Boy, and some of the stuff with Soldier Boy getting captured by Russia. Like, there's this deeper lore in the background, and each season, each episode kind of goes into it more. The Boys versus Homelander and the Supes has always been like, anytime Homelander and Billy Butcher are in a scene together, that's just gold. And in this season, there's only one scene with them. I'm pretty sure it's the scene in the kitchen where he's trying to win Ryan back, and then Homelander just kind of dismisses Butcher, notices that he has the brain mass, and pretty much just writes him off for dead and wants him to just kind of suffer. And that's it. Like, they had a number of scenes in season 3. They even had a fight scene in season 3. Like, they're such good... They're just scorched earth, as they said it in season 3. They're just balls to the walls. They hold themselves in, and they're very much two sides of the same coin, where they're caged animals, but when the restraints are off, they're, erratic. And them being erratic at each other is when you get, like, the best of the season. Scenes between Huey and Starlight, even Kumiko and Frenchie. Like, you have certain dynamics between the characters that are what carry the show. And although those scenes were in this show, I just felt like they were sidelined for this political commentary stuff. And it was just annoying because even the finale, like, exclamation marked on what made the show the best. Like, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, like, okay, we're getting this and we're getting that. Like, the finale actually, I think, was the best episode of the whole season because it did what The Boys does best. It still had a lot of the political commentary stuff in it, but it still was The Boys to a T. And for me, I ended the final episode thinking to myself, like, why didn't I see more of that? Like, why did it take the final episode to really, get things moving? Because just so much of this season, like, talking about Starlight's abortion, because obviously, we got to touch on fucking abortion, another political issue. Questioning Starlight's character, if she's a strong woman or not. The scene where she fights Firecracker just so it's like a political thing that's staged. Like, again, like, season 3 did it much better because you had the conflict of Soldier Boy trying to go after Homelander, and there was some political stuff, but it was mainly his vendetta against the other Supes that had wronged him, and he's just on a kill list, and Butcher is aligned with that because he wants Homelander to be on that list. And it's like, that's what The Boys does best. Even Ryan, I didn't feel like had that great development this season. Like, you could see the conflict within him, whether to go to Butcher's side or to Homelander's side. He does do that dumb commercial and then speaks out against it on Christmas. But I felt like he wavered too much. Like, one second he's torturing a poor assistant because he's following in the footsteps of his psychotic father. The other second he's visiting Billy, and it seems like he's warming up to how his mom would have wanted him to be. And then, like, then he's not. Like, he's so flip-floppy back and forth. And I'm like, where is Ryan's character residing? Like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be with him. Like, and it's very unclear by the end. Like, he kills that main government woman, and he learns some horrifying truths about Homelander, but is he down with the fact that the superheroes basically pulled off this coup to take the government? Like, is he okay with that? Like, is he okay with all of these things that he's learned about what his dad has done? Like, there's just this gray area. I have to imagine in season 5 there's going to be more. I feel like they didn't want to solve his character. They're like, okay, we're going to keep him ambiguous going into season 5 so you can continue to have debates and questions about where his allegiance stands. It's like, okay, whatever. But yeah, there were good moments this season. I liked the constant inner battle between, like Billy. His storyline was very self-contained. Like, he was almost on his own self-journey, fighting the virus in his head. And in the end, the virus wins. Like, I did like how his wife was the gold side and his old friend in Jeffrey Dean Morgan was the bad side. So there was that cool factor to it, but, self-contained. And again, sometimes it was sidelined for other plot points. Like, a lot of people also, like, were like, why did Frenchie sleep with, like, a guy? Like, I don't know. Like, I felt like you could have, like, again, like, I understand the show was like, oh, like, why can't he be gay? It's like, well, there was no indication in any of the previous seasons that he was gay. So it feels like you're just throwing it in there just to throw it in there. Again, I'm all for inclusion and expressionism in media, but if it feels shoehorned in, just to say it's there, like, I mean, come on, like, does that really serve the creative narrative? Especially given the fact that the two characters that the audience was fighting for the whole time, Kumiko and Frenchie, they end up expressing their feelings at the very end. Like, it's like, I was so happy when I saw that scene. I was like, oh, good, I'm glad the writers didn't take this in a dumb direction that, like, Frenchie makes amends with this guy, because he was always just, like, a side thing that he was doing to feel better about himself. I'm glad that he comes together with the person that's always been there for him. I'm like, all right, good. I'm glad they didn't just shove the wokeness down our throats just for the sake of that, and they gave the character its justice. So I was happy with that, but, I think the season wasn't bad. It was just like a shoulder shrug. Like, okay, like, by the end, I'm like, shit, like, I'm ready for more boys. But, like, that was the final episode, and then it was just kind of over. So the show just took a long time to find its stride, to find a plot that it was happy with. And then by the time it started to catch some fire, the season was over. And then you're just like, oh shit, well, great, now I gotta wait for, however long. So, I don't think this will be a problem in season 5, just given the fact that they are in a martial law situation. Like, things will just be happening. Also, given the fact that it's the final season, there's really not a whole lot of time to dilly-dally and fuck around at this point. So, yeah, again, like, there were just some things, like, there were one-off episodes, like, they did focus an entire episode, like, on the virus with, like, the mutated animals, but just, I almost forgot about this, but some of the grotesque scenes felt like they were in there just for shock value. Like, the scene with, like, Huey in the torture chamber, and some of, like, the grotesque, like, male nudity scenes. Like, again, I know this show goes balls to the walls in terms of its, language, grotesqueness, nudity, all of that stuff. It's not holding back. This is mature rated. This is not for kids. But I just think, like, some of the stuff with, like, the web weaver and the torture chamber, and just some of the, it's just, they went far for seemingly, like, I was just, like, cringing at some of the scenes. I'm like, why are we spending extended periods of time with some of this grotesque stuff when we can focus on, Ryan's character development, the war with Billy Butcher? Like, there's other, even, like, some of Homelander's psychotic scenes, like, were fun, but, like, a lot of his stuff was just self-contained. Like the times I got excited about the show was when there was crossover, like when he's trying to laser Huey and A-Train saves him. Like that was why A-Train was an enjoyable part of the season, because he had that crossover. He was the leak, as they called it, and it was nice because it was the crossover of the two universes. The more the superhero and the boys universe crossed over, that was where the show shined the brightest. And I just feel like a lot of the political stuff sidelined it, and it just made for some disappointing moments. Overall, if I had to rate the season, I'd probably give it like a 6.57, and that's mainly just the good aspects of the show carrying it in. Like, I stuck with it knowing that in the end was the crux of the show, and if I could get that out of the show in some way, I'd be happy. And I got a lot of it in the finale. I'm like, okay, it ended on a good note. I just think that overall, like, it will be the weakest. If people rate seasons 1 through 4, everyone's going to say 4 is the weakest season. Like, I don't know anyone who would rate it higher. Currently, season 3 is my favorite. We'll see if season 5 breaks that trend, mold, whatever. But, yeah, that's kind of my overarching general review. And I think, again, a lot of people have these thoughts and opinions. But, again, it's okay if you want to put some political references in your work. Just, you don't need to smash people over the head, like taking a vase and just smashing them over the head with it. Like the scene where Starlight fights the Deep. I love that. I was like, yes, this is what The Boys does best. These superhero fight scenes, like the two sides going at it. That is where the show shines. But you don't need to, like Starlight does to the Deep, taking a giant ironing fucking block, or what was it, like a weight, like a 25-pound weight, and smashing him over the head with it. Like, you don't need to do that to your audience. And you certainly don't need to insult them for expressing it, because I know the showrunner was like, well, screw anyone who doesn't agree with me. It's like, dude, like, you can't blame people for feeling this way. Like, you didn't inject this much political, I'll use the term wokeness, even though I don't like that term, into season 4, where it really wasn't. It was present in minor ways in the first 3 seasons, but not to this extent. It stands in stark contrast to your other seasons. And again, if all 4 seasons were like this, I'd be like, okay, well, like, this is what the show's trying to do. It's what it's trying to convey. But when you just have an outlier like that, it makes me question, why is there an outlier in the first place? And if it's to serve this purpose that's other than the plot, yeah, then that's when I take a pause. So, anyway, that is my review for season 4 of The Boys. Hope you all enjoyed. Do you agree with my points or not? Either way, this is the Aerie Lord. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with something in the future. Don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something. Alright, thanks guys.